But the White House is comparing Obamacare to the civil rights movement and the PR push going all the way to the top. Would Dr. Martin Luther King like Obamacare? President Obama saying this.
What do you think he'd say about Obamacare?
Oh, he'd like that. Well, because I think he understood that health care, health security, is not a privilege. It's something that a country as wealthy as ours, everybody should have access to. And, you know, starting on October 1st, because of the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, anybody who doesn't have health insurance in this country is going to be able to get it at an affordable rate.
And HHS Secretary Kathleen Sebelius going further by invoking the words of Dr. King. The Secretary writing, "Without the opportunity to live a healthy life, there is no opportunity to live the American dream or participate fully in our communities. For every one of our neighbors who lives day after day in fear because he does not have insurance, there is an urgency of now." Now she went on to say, quote, "We must march ahead." So does the White House have any business tying the health care law to the civil rights movement? Former South Carolina Senator Jim DeMint joins us. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Greta. It's good to be with you.
Nice to have you. And I know, Senator, that you're opposed to Obamacare from the get-go, but I'm curious if this is a little different issue. This is tying it to the whole idea of civil rights and to Dr. Martin Luther King, and I'm curious whether you think it's appropriate or not appropriate.
Well, it's hard to imagine that something that is going to be so harmful to America, it can be associated with the civil rights movement. The president is promising health care for everyone, but he promised it would cost less. He promised people could keep their own insurance. Millions are losing it. He promised, Greta, it would create jobs, improve our economy. People are being moved from full-time to part-time. His promises are not holding true. And what they're doing, as you know, Greta, is pushing a lot of people onto Medicaid programs that fewer and fewer doctors will see. There are better ways to get health insurance to people. And to wrap it in a package of civil rights is certainly not a fair representation of this. I think civil rights involves freedom and equality, and Americans have a right to own their own health plan and not to be dependent on the government and some bureaucracy to decide what kind of health care they're going to get.
Well, I talk to small business owners night after night, and many of them say that they're cutting back and they're doing things that suggest that Obamacare is not going to be helpful. Now, my interviews, though, are not particularly a scientific study. It's not a huge volume of people, but I assume that after the first of the year, you know, we're going to get a taste of reality one way or the other, whether it really truly is affordable, whether people truly do get it or not, whether businesses are cutting back so much that people are out of work. So this is going to be tested.
Well, Greta, we've been in 10 cities with thousands of people who've come out, a lot of small businesses. And as you know, if you don't have a job, I mean, your health insurance is not nearly as relevant. And a lot of people are losing their jobs or being pushed to part-time. Thousands of Americans are standing up saying we need to stop this bill before it goes any further. We know it's going to hurt health care. It's going to hurt people. It's not going to fulfill the president's promises. So we think by September, millions of Americans are going to be saying to Congress, stop this bad law. Let's improve the system we've got. It's the best in the world. Let's don't go down this socialistic healthcare road.
Let me ask you a question that, and you're no longer a retired U.S. Senator, but I'm curious, this whole idea of whether or not, do you think it's wise for the GOP to risk a shutdown of the government over the issue of defunding or funding Obamacare? If you were in the U.S. Senate, which way would you be willing to go that far to shut the government down?
There's no question, Greta, that if this isn't worth fighting for, nothing is. I've never heard a Republican say they want to shut the government down, and that's not the goal. At Heritage, we're asking the Congress... But that may be the realistic effect. I mean, if that's the realistic impact of it, would you be willing to live with that? The relevant question is, will Obama shut the government down in order to save his failed law? It's unfair, it's unworkable. He's given waivers to Congress, waivers to big business, but not to the average American. So if the president chooses to shut the government down, Republicans should fund the government, but they should not fund Obamacare.
Well, I think there are indeed waivers, which I don't get. A lot of people got waivers that other Americans didn't get, and of course the people who work on Capitol Hill are now getting a federal subsidy that others might not be eligible for to get. So I mean, there's a lot of sort of funny business associated with it, but it's going to be very interesting when Congress comes back to town Yeah, early September, and we see what happens. Senator, as always, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Greta. I think a lot of them are going to change their mind when they hear from their voters.
Well, we'll see. Like I said, it'll be
Yeah.
interesting.